Recording is resumed and live stream is going. Okay, we're good to go. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Can you just put the verses in the chat? And I realize that my computer needs a charge. So let me just go ahead and get that right here.
Okay, today is the 13th. Verses are 18 and 20. 10, 14, 18, 19, 20. I'm putting in the chat. Okay.
Great. Okay, I'm not able to be at the Bhakti Center's temple room this morning. So I'm just tuning in from wherever I am, like most of you. I'll just sing a simple Jai Radha Madhava without any instrumentation. I'll just sing the words by myself. You can respond on Zoom if you'd like. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Radha Kunja Bihari Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradari Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradari Jashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Jashoda Nandana Braja Janaranjana Jamunatira Vanachari Jamunatira Vanachari Jayararha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitanjena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay. Hare Krishna. Today we are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 14, verses 18 through 20. Okay. Chapter entitled Brahma's Prayers to Lord Krishna. 18, 19, and 20. Okay. Aidhyava tvarute sakim mama. Oh, it's a long verse. Adyaiva twadvrite sha kim mama nate mayatvam adharshitam. Echo si. Oh, it's a long one. I'm going to spare everybody on this one. Hare Krishna. It's a long verse. Translation. Have you not shown me today that both you yourself and everything within this creation are manifestations of your inconceivable potency? So this is Lord Brahma speaking to Krishna. First you appeared alone, and then you manifested yourself as all of Vrindavan's calves and cowherd boys, your friends. Next, you appeared as an equal number of four-handed Vishnu forms who were worshipped by all living beings, including me. And after that, you appeared as an equal number of complete universes. Finally, You have now returned to your unlimited form as the supreme absolute truth, one without a second. Purport. As stated in the Vedic literature, Sarvam Kalvidam Brahma, everything that exists is an expansion of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Thus, everything is ultimately part and parcel of the Lord's spiritual existence. By Lord Krishna's causeless mercy, Lord Brahma personally experienced that all existence, being the potency of God, is non-different from him. So we've been sharing this a little bit in our classes previously, and this discussion about Lord Brahma, because Lord Brahma is an interesting character to speak about in the Bhagavatam, because he's the original person in the universe. And so he's the original guru of our Sampradaya. We're in the Brahma Madhva Gaudiya Sampradaya. And so our Guru Parampara begins with Lord Brahma. And Lord Brahma's direct guru is Krishna. And so Brahma has this direct experience of everything within this creation are manifestations of your inconceivable potency. So Brahma has more realization of that than anybody. And at the same time, he forgot. And so Mangalarti gave led a very beautiful discussion in our Bhagavat Shravana last Sunday. And as she was speaking, I was recalling a reference of His Holiness Bhakti Tirtha Swami, who mentioned that it's our responsibility, or we're called upon to rejoin this movement every day, to recommit ourselves to Krishna consciousness every day, to remind ourselves of the principles of Krishna consciousness every day, because it's never, surrender is not an autopilot. Surrender is not is never on autopilot. And so this idea of even Lord Brahma, have you not shown me today that both yourself and everything within this creation and manifestations are your inconceivable potency? Yes, I showed you that today. I also showed you that the first time we met at the beginning of creation. And so it's a reminder for us that we forget also. We forget also in our spiritual life. And so every day, that's why we have our sadhana. That's why we have our spiritual practices, is because they are opportunities to continuously remind ourselves of Krishna consciousness. And also it elicits compassion for other people who are also forgetful. And so a question for myself is, what do I do when other people become forgetful of Krishna consciousness? Do I judge them? Do I discard them? Do I think less of them? Do I give them a hard time? Or do we remember that all of us need reminders, and our service to each other is to create a space where we can remember what we've forgotten? Srila Prabhupada was asked that question once, why have you come here? And he said, to remind you what you've forgotten, to remind you what you've forgotten. So Lord Brahma here is the original guru in our Sampradaya, and he's forgetful. We all become forgetful, and we owe it to ourselves to remind ourselves and each other. Second thing that's really, really interesting here is that Brahma is kind of taking a step-by-step recollection of, in some ways, Krishna's activities in his life. First, you appeared alone. Then you manifested yourself as Vrindavan's calves and coward friends. Next, you appeared as an equal number of four-handed Vishnu forms who were worshipped by all living beings, including me. And after that, you appeared as an equal number of complete universes. So he's going back and he's retracing the ways that Krishna acted in his life, or that he observed, or the ways that he forgot. And it's a helpful exercise for us to do as well in our time, to look back and see the ways that Krishna has acted in our life that maybe we don't always notice in the moments. And so I appreciate that here of Lord Brahma going back and actually like, oh my God, I didn't see you at that time, Krishna. I didn't observe your potencies acting at that time. But now looking back, I can see actually that you were there all along. Before I was bewildered, wondering how all these calves and cowboys were there. Now I go back, I see you manifested yourself with those cows and coward boys. And ourself and our spiritual life, sometimes when we're going through the muck of something, it feels like Krishna's abandoned us. It feels like we're alone. It feels like it's us against the world. It feels like Krishna's not showing up in our life the way we want or the way we need, but he's actually right there. We just aren't able to notice it. And it wasn't until Brahma took the time and looking back that he said, oh, Krishna was never gone. And so how often do we ourselves take the opportunity to retrace our steps in spiritual life and go back? And it's helpful. It can be faith building for us to remind ourselves of the places that Krishna showed up when we thought he wasn't there. So this forgetfulness of Brahma is very pertinent, because we all forget, we all miss where Krishna shows up in our lives. And we read Srimad Bhagavatam, we discuss with devotees, so that we could be reminded. Okay, next verse. We got 2 more verses we got to read. Any comments or questions on, well, I guess we'll stop before we get to the verses. Would anybody like to share a comment in the chat or a reflection before we move on to the verse about those points just brought up?
I like to point how Krishna shows up in our life in places where we think he isn't present. So that's very nice and hope-giving. Thank you.
He does. Thank you. And sometimes, yeah, we have to take the opportunity to go back and look. You know, I'm also observing this reflectivity of Brahma, the reflectivity of Brahma, to go back and to pause and be like, wait a second, let me go back and just observe and appreciate, you know, that remembering, smaranam, shravanam, kirtanam, Vishnu smaranam, the remembering Krishna in our life. That's a form of devotional service. And so what does it mean to remember Krishna? It means one way of remembering Krishna is to look back on our life and remember the ways that Krishna showed up, or to maybe observe for the first time and to see our lives through the lens of Krishna's loving hand. To go back even before we may have met devotees, or before we maybe have even come into Krishna consciousness. You know, the less obvious ones, you know, we think, oh, Krishna's when I met my guru, or when I, you know, started chanting japa, or when I did that service at the temple, or when, you know, it was my birthday and all the devotees showed up and saying happy birthday to me, or, you know, when I had that really powerful experience in kirtan, you know, the obvious ways that we can look back and remember Krishna showing up in our lives. But sometimes the less obvious ones, before we even came to Krishna consciousness, and seeing how Krishna actually was just arranging all the pieces of our life to bring us to this point of being in the association of devotees. And whenever we think that things aren't working out for us in life, just remember, like, oh my God, like, I'm in Krishna consciousness. One of my favorite, Indrajuma Swami was here last week, Thursday and Friday, and he just infused the organization with just tremendous spiritual energy and enthusiasm. And Friday, he gave his class. Thursday, he was just there at the Bhakti Center for Kirtan, and Friday, he gave a class and Kirtan. And at the beginning of his class, he was talking about identities in the material world and the different identities that we have. And he said that today, especially, there are just so many different ways in which we can misidentify with the body. And he was referencing, and he said, especially when the World Cup is going on. And he said there were 2 teams that lost that day, Brazil and Netherlands. Somebody reminder from the audience, for those that follow the World Cup. And he said, yes, he said and he was talking about the polarities of spiritual life, of material life. And he said, there were 2 teams that lost and 2 teams that won. And he said, it's a very, very sad, terrible day for everyone in Brazil and the Netherlands, but it's a very great day for anyone in Krishna consciousness. I appreciate that. Yeah, but it's a really great day for everyone in Krishna consciousness. And so when we think life isn't going our way, when we think that we can remind ourselves that actually, like, maybe materially, of course, things are up and things are down, but at the end of the day, Krishna's arranged our life in such a way that we've been brought to Krishna consciousness, that we've been brought to Prabhupada's shelter, that we are listening to Srimad Bhagavatam, and we have the opportunity at any given moment, no matter how far we feel like we've deviated from our practice, from our path, or forgotten Krishna, remembering Krishna is something that we can do in a moment, and immediately we are back in the practice of Krishna consciousness simply by that remembrance. And so it's whether you journal or whether you just give yourself voice notes or whether you just sit and think when you're on the train, looking back on your life, my quote unquote, my pre-Krishna consciousness days. And for some of us, we may have been born and raised in the movement. And so, we never came to Krishna consciousness at a particular day in our life because we were born that way. But for all of us, in the less obvious periods of our life, we can see where Krishna is guiding us. And the proof is that we're here. The proof is that we're here. So Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam, remembering Krishna. So Brahma is performing that limb of devotional service here. He's performing remembrance by going back and looking at Krishna's activities in his life. Okay, we got 2 more verses. This one's a little easier to read. Ajanantam tvat padavim anantmani atmatmanabashi vitatyamayam shrishtav ivaham jagata vidana iva tvam eshonta iva trinetraha. To persons ignorant of your transcendental position, you appear as part of the material world, manifesting yourself by the expansion of your inconceivable energy. Thus, for the creation of the universe, you appear as me, Brahma. For its maintenance, you appear as Vishnu, and for its annihilation, you appear as Lord Trinetra, Shiva. And so, in the 4th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna references multiple times about understanding his transcendental position. Janma karma chame divyam, that one who understands his actual position never takes birth again in this material world. Avajananti mamudha, that fools deride him when he descends in the human form of life. In a separate verse Krishna talks about. So this not being bewildered. And it's interesting when we see the example, so this idea of forgetfulness, of missing Krishna in our life. And so Brahma missed Krishna, like literally, the little cowherd boy in Vrindavan missed that was Krishna. But for us, where are the ways in which I'm missing Krishna? Where is Krishna appearing in my life that I'm not seeing him? That I'm to persons ignorant of your actual transcendental position. And so as a devotee, am I operating from the place, I want to bring myself to the place where I'm trusting that Krishna's hand is guiding every moment of my life. Prabhupada was at a class once and he spoke to the audience, you think you're sitting on the floor, but I know that I'm sitting on the hand of Krishna. You think you're sitting on the floor, but I'm sitting on the hand of Krishna. And so even that Prabhupada was such an example of Smaranam. He was such an example of constantly remembering Krishna. And one of the best ways you can get that is listening to recordings or reading narratives of his morning walks. Prabhupada's morning walks, and he would go on morning walks and he would just see nature around him and connected to Krishna. There was once a swarm of mosquitoes flying, and Prabhupada said, see, no need for traffic control. The swarm of mosquitoes buzzing in a swarm, and Prabhupada noticed that, wow, there's this swarm of mosquitoes, and they're all flying around, and none of them are running into each other. And he said, see, no need for traffic control. Krishna has arranged and designed it perfectly. And so Prabhupada would see insects flying in the air, and he would be reminded of Krishna's creation. Prabhupada would be sitting on the floor and just feeling the support of the floor underneath him. And he would say, this is Krishna's support in my life. Prabhupada said, one day you will feel the rays of the sun to be like the warm embrace of your lover. And so this constant remembering of Krishna. And so again, when things happen in our life, we're no longer under the dictation of karma. We're no longer just subject to happenstance in the material world, but that Krishna is guiding every instance in our life. And a hallmark of a devotee for us, it's so interesting, it's been coming up in discussions of other classes, this idea of like what makes a devotee. And a devotee, you know, we have all of these practices that we have in Krishna consciousness, these vows, these principles. When we come to initiation, we, you know, vow to chant a certain 16 rounds every day and follow a certain number of principles. And that's our commitment as initiated devotees, or whatever our commitment may be in our spiritual life. But that's not what makes us a devotee. Those are the commitments and those are the practices that help bring us closer to Krishna, that we commit to because we want to practice, we want to flex the muscle of surrender in our life. But what makes somebody a devotee, Krishna mentions again in Bhagavad Gita, api chetsutarachata bhajate mamananyabhak sadhur eva samantavya. Let's look it up.
Samyak vyavasito sthita.
Say it again, Krishna, the whole thing.
Sadhureva samantavya samyak vyavasito sthita.
Thank you. 9:30. Apichet sudarachato. Apichet, even if one commits a dhuracha, a very terrible action. Bhajate mam ananyabhak. Bhajate, if they're perform bhajan to me, ananyabhak, without deviation, if they're continuously performing this devotional service, sadhur eva samantavya, they're a sadhu. Samyak vyavistohisaha. This vyavisita, because they are rightly situated in determination, because they are sincere, because they continuously throw themselves at me. We talked about this last week. And so it's this relentless searching for and remembering Krishna in our life. And so to persons ignorant of your actual transcendental position, what makes somebody devotee is that we're never ignorant of Krishna's transcendental position. We may stumble, we may fail, we may fall, we may struggle to live up to the standards we or other people set for ourselves, but we're always willing to remember Krishna's transcendental position and my subservient position in relationship to him. I allow it to humble me. I allow Krishna's remembrance of Krishna's to make me tolerant. What does tolerance mean? Tolerance means that there's something more important than whatever's bothering me right now. Tolerance is when I realize that there's something more important than whatever I think is bothering me. Because if I think that whatever's bothering me right now is the most important thing in the world, then it's impossible to be tolerant. Because now everything's fixated on this inconvenience or this botheration, etc. But how do I become tolerant? Become tolerant by recognizing that there's something more important. It's not worth it. Yes, it's painful. Yes, it's inconvenient. Yes, it's uncomfortable. But it's not worth getting distracted about something more important. Offering all respects to others and not respecting any for myself. Why do I not expect any respect for myself? Because I know. I know who I am. I know what I struggle with. I know my position. I know Krishna's transcendental position, and I know my eternal subservient position in relationship to him. And so when we practice that formula, Kirtaniya Sadahari, Krishna unlocks himself and reveals himself. And we constantly feel Krishna's presence in our life. So Krishna never left. Krishna never went away. Brahma simply forgot him. And so the moments of where are you, Krishna? It's not like where are you, Krishna? It's how can I see you, Krishna? And that's our job, that smart and that remembrance. Purport. Although the impersonal Mayavadi philosophers think that the demigods are illusory, Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, and Lord Vishnu are stated here to be expansions of the Supreme Personality Godhead and are thus real. Indeed, they are the extraordinarily powerful controllers of the universe. The ultimate truth is a supreme and beautiful person. That's a great line, isn't it? The ultimate truth is a supreme and beautiful person. And thus, throughout the creation of God, we will always find personal touch. Throughout the creation of God and throughout our lives, isn't it the same thing we've been talking about, right? We'll always find that personal touch. You're sitting on the floor, but I'm sitting on the hand of Krishna. Where can I find Krishna's personal touch in my life? Pausing, reflections, questions, before we move on to the next and final verse, and then we'll discuss that verse, and then we'll have final questions. Would anybody like to share or type in the chat or share a reflection or a question or...
I'm just so appreciating this class. And what you said, the definition of tolerance, there is something more important than what is bothering me in this moment. It reminds me similarly to Ranaswamy has said that humility is just being honest, like realizing our position, right? Humility is not like, oh, I'm bad. Humility is just Krishna is great. And I'm a small, infinitesimal part and parcel of Krishna. And so your definition of tolerance, it seems to me like the same thing, like the world does not revolve around me. My problems are not like this big thing, like what's important in life. Actually, what's important is Krishna and others, and seeing myself as the servant of the servant of the servant of others. So I don't need to be fixated on what is bothering me. Instead, I can choose to be grateful for the fact that we are practicing Krishna consciousness.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, thank you. And really, tolerance is also putting things into perspective. Let's say, last year I went to one of my last trips to India. I was on a flight, and the entertainment system wasn't working. So it was like a 16-hour nonstop flight, and there were no movies. It's like, well, and I didn't download anything on my phone. Like I had nothing on my phone, and so I was like, I got nothing for an entire flight. And you're like, it's gonna be a really miserable flight. Or there's something about a flight, or the food isn't the way. I mean, I don't always eat the food, or the seat's not comfortable, or whatever it might be, or there's a baby crying, or there's something, like there's something that we can find that's like disturbing, that feels uncomfortable, that we can fixate on, on our flight, as an example. But imagine if we were in a scenario where I was flying with Kishore Chandra, and it felt like we were joking in our mind, because the flight was so it was a budget airline, and flight was so kind of, it felt like what was the word that we were using, or the phrase we were using? It felt like it was like a disaster relief program, that we got the last flight out of Armageddon. And we were just like, it was just like the world is on fire, and we just got out of this flight, and it was just like this rinky-dinky airplane. And I was thinking, like, what if that was actually the case? What if it was like, our dear community member, I know people in our community that were living in New York when, I'll give a different example, that were living in New York when the World Trade Centers went down. And one person worked in Wall Street. He lives in Jersey, and he worked in Wall Street, and he would take a ferry across the Hudson River to get to his work. And he got to work, and the World Trade Centers were burning down. He saw he saw people's heads getting cut off by flying shrapnel, etc. And they went back, and he got the last ferry back across the Hudson River to make it back to Jersey. Do you think he cared whether or not he got a seat? Sometimes you get on the subway and it's so crowded, like, oh, I didn't get a seat on the subway. Do you think he cared whether he got a seat, or whether it was crowded, or whether the bathroom was working or not, or whether there was an entertainment system on the ferry? It was like, oh my God, like I'm so fortunate that I just got out of here, because it's not important how comfortable I am on this ferry. What's so important is that I escaped with my life, that I'm safe, that I made it out. And so sometimes we can focus on the minutia of something because all I think is my comfort on this flight is the most important thing to me right now. As opposed to putting into perspective when something much more is important, we become tolerant because actually it's not the most important thing. Ananda Manju's got your hand up.
Yes, I just wanted to reflect back your point about how us as devotees, or aspiring devotees, we're creating spaces to simply remind ourselves of Krishna, because forgetfulness of Krishna is the greatest disaster in the entire creation. So it's I just find that to be really beautiful for me as just bringing back this collective purpose. And again, as you just said, like letting go of the minutiae and realizing, are we just reminding ourselves of Krishna? And if that's the case, then we can go back to the unity in our movement or anywhere else, as opposed to focusing on details.
Thank you. Forgetting Krishna is the greatest disaster in our lives. It's true. And so, yeah, beautiful. I think often of the journey home and Ranat Swami's story when he was in the train in Mathura, going to Mathura, that stopped Mathura, and it's just like this miserable space of being stuffed on this train. And but it was Krishna's hand in his life, bringing him to Vrindavan. And so Bhakta Hugo has a hand up.
Hare Krishna. On the point of reflecting on how Krishna has acted in our lives and how he's continuing to act in every single moment and every single day. I recall one time, Srila Prabhupada, I believe it was in Los Angeles, he was kind of being challenged by a professor. The professor was kind of learned in Vedic studies. They studied the Vedas and everything. And they were saying, Srila Prabhupada, your disciples, they don't always really embody the Vedic ideal. They make all these mistakes and like they don't really, not really good representation of the Vedic culture. And Prabhupada responded that, well, if you're looking for fault, there will always be fault there. If you're looking for Krishna, then you will see Krishna. And that's how I defended the devotees. And I think a similar idea can be applied kind of in these discussions that we're having now, that, yeah, in every moment in our life, whether it's a success or a failure, an inconvenience or convenience, we can kind of, are we looking for Krishna or are we looking for the inconvenience in the situation? So that was a thought I had. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Hugo, for that. I appreciate that. Yeah, we always find what we're looking for, and if we're looking to see where Krishna, it may be hard, and sometimes it also it's the power. Indra Swami, when he gave his class last Friday, he was talking about the 5 potent angas of bhakti listed by Rupa Goswami in the Bhakti Samrita Sindhu, of the Nam, the Dham, the Bhagavatam, the deity, and the devotee. That of all of them, the devotee, in one sense, he was making the argument, is the most important, because all of the other ones take place in the association or by the mercy of devotees. And so sometimes we need other devotees to help us remember Krishna. And so so how often do we, when we go to somebody and we're sharing our life or explaining a problem, are we just complaining and venting and talking about how the other person's to blame and blah, blah, blah? Are we going to our friends, our devotees in Krishna consciousness and saying, help me find Krishna in this situation? What am I not seeing? And that's Sangha. That is Sangha, where people are helping us to spot Krishna in our life. And so, as you were talking, Hugo, about seeing Krishna, sometimes we can't do it on our own and we need other people to help us. And that humbles us. That humbles us as well. So I see a hand from Bruce. Bruce, so glad to see your hand.
Hare Krishna, good morning. Sorry it took me a second driving. Dayal, I love when you give class. I have this question from, my limited understanding of Krishna consciousness and bhakti. This idea of forgetting Krishna. I'm waking up in the morning, I'm doing my practice, I'm here listening Bhagavatam class with you all. I try and remember at work so many times as much as possible throughout the day, in the evening at home. When I'm not remembering Krishna, this is what's really been trying, like I'm trying as much as possible. And it's not like a big struggle or this like duty or this bad feeling. Duty, it is a duty, but it's not a struggle. But I feel sometimes when I'm not remembering him, how do I hold that perspective in the moments where I'm distracted by life? And I hear what you're saying. When Prabhupada's walking in nature, he's looking at even as small as mosquitoes. I hear reference to ants, so many different aspects, but I just don't know the mindset or the mood when I'm not there.
Yeah, that's a really great question. And first and foremost, I think it's important for us to give ourselves some forgiveness and grace and understanding for not being 100% Krishna conscious. That's why we're here. And so when we look at examples, when we read Shastra of saints and sadhus and Srila Prabhupada and gurus and senior devotees, it can be simultaneously inspiring and also scary or discouraging even at times, because wow, they're so great. I'm not like that. Like we start to see the ickiness of our life and feel so unqualified or unworthy or so far from it. And so I think, but as I was mentioning in the beginning, this whole verse and section of Brahma forgetting. Brahma had his forgetful moments. And so we should at least remind ourselves that it's normal. You're not a bad devotee, you're not a non-devotee, you're not a, whatever, but like it's normal. And B, I think that it's a process that we have to the process of Krishna consciousness is setting ourselves up in such a way that Krishna is going in so often, what goes in comes out. And so sometimes in those moments, we do our best, but we prepare for those moments outside the moment itself. And so when we insert Krishna consciousness, I've had this experience sometimes where like I'll be listening to a lecture of my guru or somebody at night before bed, and then I'll have a dream of that person. And it's not like this prophetic dream where I get this instruction like, oh my God, I'm dreaming of this great soul. It's because what I was putting in my consciousness showed up in my dream, And so what we find is that as devotees, we set ourselves up in such a way, as you said, you're remembering and you're remembering and you're remembering. The more and more we do that, the less and less we'll forget. It's normal to forget, but the more and more we do that, the less that we forget. And what we find is that when we get really, really, really sincere in our Krishna consciousness, Krishna really starts to grind out every little piece of ulterior motive or anything other that's not supposed to be there. We read the Gudita Marjana pastime of Lord Chaitanya in his pastimes about when he cleaned the Gundita temple, and then afterwards he cleaned the temple, and then he went back and he cleaned it again and again, and every last morsel of dirt he would go back and clean. And the analogy of the cleaning of our hearts, and in bhakti we have these stages of bhakti: sadhana bhakti, bhava bhakti, prema bhakti. Bhava bhakti is this very advanced stage of a devotional life with very intense sentiment towards Krishna. But there's even this slight little residue of ego, of offenses that need to be kind of like scraped out. And so just the fact that you're answering this question, Bruce, is a sign of your Krishna consciousness and your sincerity. And I think it's just a matter of catching ourselves more quickly, and also just allowing ourselves to, where can I bring Krishna into my life more easily on a regular basis? And so devotees, whether it's, the way we set up our house, the way that we think Vaisheshika Maharaj has these like wristbands that he puts on his wrist, like Nitai Gauranga.
Yeah.
Like Nitai Gauranga wristbands, it's like, oh, maybe I need a Nitai Gauranga wristband. And I just remember Gauranga in that moment, or the ways that we just kind of, devotees, we wear our Tulsi beads, you know what I mean? So Krishna can recognize us. And so that we also, all the things that we do are ways in trying to remember ourselves with Krishna. Ananda Manjari, I see your hand up, but I hope that we can talk more about that, Bruce. Give me a call. We'll chat. I just want
Stay in the shower.
I will, I just want to, I have to read the final verse here. Otherwise it'll throw everything off. So verse 20, because I'm supposed to read 18 through 20, and then we have time, we can get your hand up, Ananda Manjari. Suresh Rishivisha Tataiva Nishvapi Tirakshu Yadha Shvapite Janasya Janmasatam Durmata Nigrahaya Prabho Vitata Sar Anugrahaya Cha. Translation: O Lord, O Supreme Creator and Master, you have no material birth. Yet to defeat the false pride of the faithless demons and show mercy to your saintly devotees, you take birth among the demigod sages, human sages, animals, and even aquatics. That is our reference again to Bhagavad Gita, 4th chapter. Krishna mentions in 4:9, one who knows the transcendental nature of my appearance and activities does not, upon leaving the body, take their birth again in this material world, but attains my eternal abode, or Arjuna. And what verse is it? Is it in the 9th chapter? Krishna Dai Prabhu, Avajanati Mam Mudha, or Sharan? Where is that verse? Here it is, 9:11. Avajanati Mamudha Manusham Tanum Ashratim Param Bhavam Ajananto Mama Bhuta Maheshwaram. Fools deride me when I descend in the human form. They do not know my transcendental nature as the Supreme Lord of all that be. That's Brahma's situation in a nutshell. He derided Krishna when he was there in the human form in Gokula Vrindavan. And so it's being referenced here. So what we find in Gita, we see elaborated on in Srimad Bhagavatam. Purport, and then we'll close out here. Among the demigods, Lord Krishna appears in such forms as Vamanadev, among the sages as Parashuram, among human beings as Lord Krishna himself and as Lord Ramachandra, and among animals as the boar incarnation. Lord Krishna appears among the aquatics as Matsya, the gigantic fish. Indeed, the plenary expanses of the Supreme Personality of God are innumerable, as the Lord relentlessly comes down within the universe to smash the false pride of the atheists and show mercy to the saintly devotees. Another reference to Bhagavad Gita. Purchunaya sadhunam vinashaya chaduskatam. And so we should think also to smash the false pride of me, and to fan the spark of my devotional creeper. In another sense, the Lord never appears since he exists eternally. His appearance is like that of the sun, which is always present in the sky, but which periodically appears to our vision. Hare Krishna. Ananda Manjari, you got your hand up. It's 8 o'clock. We will go until they stop us.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to add to your previous point. It reminded me of the lecture I heard by His Holiness Radhanath Swami, and he was discussing what it means to control our senses and to be disciplined in that pursuit. And one of the important points that really struck me was that he mentioned that it's not whether we have desires or we don't have them, that we all have desires and eventually they become purified. But the importance is that the person who wants to control their desires and does their best to do it is a Goswami, and the one who actually serves their desires and their senses is essentially the servant of their own desires.
Beautiful.
So,
thank you, Ananda Manjari.
Just wanted to bring that.
Thank you for sharing that with us and bringing that into our hearts. It is 8:01. Nanda Bihariji, do we continue? Is the darshan opening?
Yeah, we can continue, and Adipusha Prabhu will let us know.
Okay, let us know.
Mute yourself, Adipusha Prabhu, when the conch blows.
Thank you. Jeffrey Ackler put a nice quote from Fred Rogers in the chat. When I was a boy and I would see scary things in the news, my mother would say to me, look for the helpers. You will always find people who are helping. And so looking for Krishna. And I just wanted to, since we have time, is also just elaborate more on what Bruce was asking and sharing about. As devotees, we have the opportunity, we see our life in a greater context. And so in every moment, it's not just about this moment, it's about how this moment is shaping and molding my consciousness. So we have the idea of samskars. And so every moment has the opportunity to create an impression in the mind. And so as devotees, our goal is to continuously create more and more and more impressions on the mind so that the memory foam of our consciousness molds into the shape of Krishna. And so we get to the point, and Prabhupada would say that we can't help but remember Krishna. There we go. Speaking of remembering Krishna. Thank you all so much for the Prabhupada Ki Jai, Bhagavatam Ki Jai, Vaishnav Vrinda Ki Jai, and to go to Premanandi Haribol.
Dayal Gauranga Prabhu Ki Jai. Great class. Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.
This Prabhu's car will turn into a chariot.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Arjuna is here. Yeah. Uncle Arjuna, look who's here.
Arjuna Prabhu, Hare Krishna.
Hi, Bo. Close it up.
Okay, thank you very much. It's afterglow time. If we have any reflections or realization, Jamuna Jaya, unmute yourself. As soon as I see you, my reflexes go on Jamuna Jaya. Uh-oh, we lost Jamuna Jaya. Cindy Lunsford, Hare Krishna, would you like to reflect? We see your camera is on.
Oh, I was just reading all the comments because sometimes I can't do that while I'm listening, but I really love the idea of the more we remember Krishna, the less we forget. So it's just constantly finding ways to fill the day where we can see or hear or, just remember in any way. So I really appreciate that today. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Yeah. Your consciousness is a setup. You're setting yourself up. Every
Yeah.
moment. I like that. Thank you.
Beautiful.
Adipusha Prabhu. We see your glowing head in the dark.
Hare Krishna, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. We're reflecting on the theme everybody was talking about tolerance and how seeing things in perspective and the idea that, just like there's a verse, Matras Parshas Tukantena, that the non-permanent appearance of happiness and distress, they come and go. One must learn to tolerate them without being disturbed. So it's not that we don't perceive the heat, the cold, the pain, the infamy, but what's not disturbed is what, do you know?
I know. Let's see if other devotees know. Let's see. So what is it that is not disturbed or interrupted?
Our service is not disturbed under any circumstance. If we have prescribed duty, if we have the relationship with the spiritual master and he indicates, please do this, and you focus on that, you endeavor for that, no matter what the result is, whether it looks glorious, whether it looks like a disaster, whether people are praising you or laughing at you or criticizing you or ignoring you, you just go on. We focus. That's he was saying, I want to see that in perspective, that this is what I'm endeavoring for. We're attached to the endeavor, not the results. And we can always try, just like in Manjari was saying, Krishna sees that. We're focusing on trying to do what he's asking us to do. And that's pleasing Krishna, and that's our success. Krishna's pleased by us trying. Anybody can try. Aspire for it, try for it, and the Lord is pleased. Amazing. But that's what we tell, without being tolerate, without being disturbed. We don't let our service, our prescribed duty, relax that endeavor. Yeah.
A great point. I was thinking, if there's nothing to tolerate, then it may very well mean that you're not really doing anything. If you're not overcoming anything, if there's nothing to tolerate, then what are you doing? How are you? What's your service? What's your service, Prabhu? Yeah, thank you.
Well, glory to Prabhupada, Hare Krishna.
So did you go back? Oh, brother. So here's my question for all of you who's still here. So what moment in life did you go to see that, to acknowledge Krishna's presence there? What moment did you travel to? Did you do that? Did you do that practice? What moment did you go to? I can share my moment quickly. When I was in high school, I had a girlfriend. I'm choosing my words very carefully because my wife is here listening. So I had a girlfriend in high school, and we would break up and come back together again and break up. It was, weird. So that when we were in this breakup period, I get a text from her proposing to reunite and so on and so forth, and I respond to it, and then we go back and forth with those messages, and then I receive a text from a friend of mine who says, "Don't fall for it. They're making fun of you." So apparently they all were at a party, and she was texting me and everybody was laughing at me. And so many years later, I'm going back in that moment and acknowledge that Krishna is there, frustrating my attempts to be happy materially. So Krishna was there with me in that situation, and I'm grateful to Krishna for that. So that's the moment that I traveled to. It's not that I'm hurting, it's all long gone, but Krishna is there, arranging our life in such a way that we surrender, or dismantling our life in such a way that we surrender eventually. Bhima Prabhu. Darshan at the same time.
Okay. Yeah, don't look at me.
Yeah, don't.
Can you hear me okay? I'm sort of in the middle of nowhere here. I'm in the field.
I can hear you.
Yes, that was a wonderful class, wonderful reflections. I think that if I wish I had some nice quotes to give, but I always go blank as soon as I put the microphone on. The sense of wonder, if we can retain a sense of wonder about everything that's around us, as Prabhupada did with the mosquitoes or the gnats that were flying and never running into each other. I have lots of experience with gnats being on a farm, millions circling around our head. The wonder that nature presents in the simplest of things, these minute insects having a life. We feel like, oh, Brahma's got these trillions of years of life, and to him it must seem like such a long time, and isn't that wonderful, the life of Brahma? But that would be no more than a gnat saying to us, a gnat that lives for 15 minutes in the air before it mates and drops to the ground and dies, the mayfly, that is the whole life for them. And then we as humans, we seek our mate and live for a short period of time and drop to the ground and die. And Brahma, his trillions of years only feel like our 100 years to him. It's all relative. No one has any special dispensation from what this material world is all about. But in that, and in that time that we spend, if we maintain our sense of wonder in the littlest of things, nature being most prevalent, but then also, of course, the devotees or people, the eyes, the light of the eyes, the smile, the war, the drama, the arch of history. If we just study those, always keeping Krishna in mind, we can see Krishna's Leela playing out always. His Leela that's in this 10th canto, his destruction of the demons and his playfulness with his cowherd boys and his romance with the gopis. This is playing out at all times, and especially within our heart. And if we could just, when we chant and realize and ask Krishna to reveal himself, it's not necessarily will be in the form of the deity or in the form of some ecstatic moment during kirtan, but it may just be in one time this summer, a dragonfly landed right on my hand while I was reaching out for the halter on a horse. And the dragonfly just lands on my fingers and stuck to me for like 10 minutes as I walked around. I didn't even move my hand. I'm just looking at the miracle of these transparent wings, the netting and the insect thorax with the muscles, and just this ability to fly here, there, and to fly and stay still like a hummingbird. It was
Did you give him prashad?
Yeah, there's plenty of prashad. I go outside and I say Hare Krishna, and the whole field hopefully turns into prashad. But anyways, we just have to, it's like Dayal Gauranga said, it's our consciousness. We reflect. That's that mirror that Lord Chaitanya is cleaning. That mirror, that consciousness, the desire to want to see Krishna everywhere and all times. Krishna will reveal himself. And it's not necessarily some cultural thing that, there has to be, some kind of ringing of bells present or peacock feathers or something like that. Krishna reveals himself everywhere. And we just have to be patient enough and still enough within us and drop our material desires, and Krishna will shine that light of his wonder, of this opulence of his. Even the material world itself is a reflection. Anyways, I'm rambling on, but that's how I do it, and I'm sticking to it. Hare Krishna.
We should have some background music when you speak. Just so poetic and just concise. Coherent. Yeah, that's the word. Coherent. You speak very coherently, Bhima Prabhu. Okay, one final reflection and we'll wrap it up. Sundaranandaji, our finisher.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. So yeah, when you were recounting your moment, I was thinking of mine, and I was a little bit, in some ways like that. I guess it's a time to open up. So this was when I was before married. So I was in a relationship, and then and it was going back and forth and similarly, and I was trying to come out of it, but I didn't have the strength to do it. Right around that time, I found devotees were distributing the Bhagavad Gita in Texas, and I was there, and I found that copy. I opened it, read some of Srila Prabhupada's purports. I was also watching the Mahabharata at that time, and everything connected. I had a lot of questions which were not answered, and they were answered, and I felt this is the way. So anyways, a long story short, I found the strength, and after that, to finally say, no, this is bad. I need something positive in life. And then that's when I got married to Amala Gopi. So here we are. So I think that I really, looking back, there's no way I could have done that on my own, because I kept, slipping back into this negative, space that was not good for me. So thank you. Thank you for reminding me. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Sundarananda. Our warmest regards to Amala Gopi. She's taking very good care of you. Always looks.
Yep. She was, bringing me up, spiritually, materially, and everything, and cooking like great prasad, like Bhima Prabhu says. So so she's always right for sure.
Yeah, nice. Thank you, Sundarananda Prabhu. Okay, this is it for today. Bhima Prabhu writes safely. Okay. Hare Krishna. Love you all. Hari Bol. Bhima Prabhu, can you pet that horse for me? And say Hare Krishna in his ear.
I say Hare Krishna every morning. I wake them up at 5 a.m. They hate it. They think it's time for Mangalarti. And I sing while I take care of them. And this pony here, he's very head shy.
Oh, that's the rescue pony?
Yeah, he was abused, and apparently something about reaching out for his face makes him, as you can see, watch him back away. See? So I actually had to get a lasso. See, that's what Radhanath Swami used to do to me. He would lasso me with prasad. And so come on, you go ahead and eat now. So he shies away, and I actually have to get him in a stall before I can catch him and groom him and stuff like that. Yeah, this is my life. I see Krishna in it. I have horses that I cannot ride. They're too old. I'm too old. They're injured. I'm injured. We're just biding our time and trying to hear as much of Krishna's name. And they hear Bhagavatam class every morning. So with me, as well as the dog. So yeah, thank you very much for making this offering, and especially this afterglow. It's wonderful. It brings us very close together. We get to know each other.
Yeah, I love that.
We can't have the Sangha physically, but this is just as good, if not better, because we're open. We can talk, and then we can sort of go. We don't have to maintain a conversation. We can actually just say a couple of things and then listen to what other people have to say. So once again, Hare Krishna.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we're all abused ponies rescued by Prabhupada and lassoed by Radhanath Maharaj. So we're on the same herd. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.